The mining ship Resilience drifted through the asteroid field like a ghost among the rocks. David Park watched the scanners paint green dots across his screen, each one marking another chunk of valuable ore. His crew worked in silence, their movements efficient after years of practice. Nobody talked about what they were really doing out here. 300 years had passed since humanity first ventured beyond Earth's solar system. The galaxy had welcomed them with polite indifference, filing them away as another minor species with limited potential. 47 star systems seemed like enough space for the humans to play in. The major powers had bigger concerns than watching some upstart mammals expand their territory. The hegemony controlled the galactic north with military precision. Their warships patrolled trade routes with the confidence of a species that had never known defeat. The collective dominated the core worlds, their ancient wisdom guiding policy for thousands of star systems. The Republic managed commerce across the Outer Rim, their merchant fleets, carrying goods between worlds that had never heard of Earth. All three powers viewed humanity as useful but unremarkable. Humans made decent traders and adequate soldiers. They followed galactic law and paid their taxes. They asked few questions and caused little trouble. Perfect citizens for a stable galaxy. David's system crackled to life. Surface team to bridge? We've got something interesting down here. Define interesting, David replied, though he already suspected what they had found. Looks like another artifact. Same design as the others. Should we extract it? David glanced at his navigation display. They were 40 light-years from the nearest inhabited system, deep in a region marked as surveyed but uninhabited. The perfect place to find things that weren't supposed to exist. Bring it up, standard protocols. The artifact would join dozens of others in the ship's secure cargo bay. Ancient technology that predated every known civilization. Devices that bent the laws of physics and challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about science. The kind of discoveries that could change the balance of power forever. Humanity had been finding these artifacts for over a century. Each one taught them something new about the universe. Each one added to their growing understanding of forces that the major powers had never imagined. The galaxy saw humans as primitive newcomers, but humans had been learning from teachers older than any living species. Dr. Michael Torres ran his fingers across the artifact's surface, feeling the subtle vibrations that indicated active technology. His laboratory deep within Luna's core held secrets that would revolutionize galactic science. Quantum mechanics that allowed matter to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Energy systems that drew power from the fabric of space itself. Weapons that could rewrite the fundamental forces of nature. Any progress on the translation? Asked his assistant, a young woman named Sarah who had spent 5 years studying the alien symbols. The mathematical concepts are starting to make sense. They understood things about reality that we're only beginning to grasp. Torres didn't mention that his team had already cracked the basic principles. The quantum disruptor in his vault could unmake matter at the atomic level. The phase shifter could move objects through dimensions that normal physics claimed were impossible. The neural interface could link biological minds to artificial intelligence systems. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood before a holographic display showing the hidden fleet. Hundreds of ships floated in the darkness between stars, their hulls absorbing light and energy to remain invisible. The Shadow Fleet represented 30 years of careful construction, each vessel built with technology that surpassed anything. In the galaxy's official arsenals, how many are operational? She asked her chief engineer. 80% of the fleet is ready for deployment. The new quantum drives are performing beyond specifications. We can strike anywhere in the galaxy. Within 72 hours, Stone nodded. The galaxy's military leaders measured their response times in weeks or months. They moved fleets like chess pieces, announcing their intentions through diplomatic channels. They fought wars with predictable tactics and conventional weapons. Humanity had chosen a different path. Their ships could appear anywhere without warning. Their weapons could adapt to any defense. Their soldiers trained for battles that the galaxy had never imagined. Colonel Ana Rivera watched her troops practice in the zero-gravity combat facility. They moved through three-dimensional battlefields with grace that would have impressed the hegemon's elite units. Each soldier wore armor that could phase between dimensions, making them nearly impossible to target. Their weapons fired ammunition that existed in quantum superposition until it struck its target. Enemy contact bearing 27 Mark IV. Announced the training computer. The squad responded instantly. Their movements coordinated through neural links that allowed them to share thoughts and sensations. They flanked the simulated enemy from 6 different directions, using techniques that assumed their opponents would fight in conventional space, but the galaxy's militaries had never faced enemies that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They had never encountered soldiers who could share consciousness across vast distances. They had never dealt with weapons that could choose their own targets based on quantum probability. Ambassador Lisa Chun smiled politely as the hegemon's representative outlined their latest trade proposal. The aliens wanted access to human manufacturing facilities, offering technology that humanity had surpassed decades ago. They spoke with the condescension of adults addressing children, explaining concepts that human scientists had mastered before. The ambassador was born. "We appreciate your generous offer," Chung replied, her voice carrying just the right tone of grateful humility. "Humanity is always eager to learn from our more advanced neighbors." The representative preened, satisfied that the humans knew their place in the galactic hierarchy. He would report back that the Terran Federation remained compliant and eager to serve. His superiors would file the report among thousands of others. Secure in their belief that humanity posed no threat to the established order, Chen maintained her smile until the alien delegation departed. Then she activated her secure communication system and sent a single coded message to military command. The galaxy continued to underestimate humanity's capabilities, which meant their most important strategic advantage remained intact. The message traveled through quantum channels that the major powers didn't know existed, reaching recipients who had spent centuries preparing for what was coming, because humanity's deep space monitoring stations had detected something that would change everything. Something was approaching from beyond the galactic rim, something that would test every assumption about power and survival that the galaxy had ever made, and when it arrived, the galaxy would discover what humanity had been building in the shadows. The emergency beacon screamed across subspace, its signal carrying terror from the hegemon's proudest world. Admiral Rebecca Stone listened to the transmission with growing dread, though her expression remained calm. The voice belonged to Fleet. "Commander Terran, one of the hegemon's most decorated officers. This is Nexus Command. We are under attack by unknown forces. Our weapons have no effect. They're not ships. They're something else. Something that consumes matter and converts it into more of themselves. Send everything you have. Send it now." The transmission cut to static. Long-range sensors confirmed what the message had implied. The energy signature that had been Nexus Prime, home to 12 billion souls, was gone. In its place was something that registered as neither matter nor energy, but something in between. Dr. Michael Torres studied the sensor data with mounting horror. They're not using conventional technology. These entities operate on principles we've never encountered. They consume atomic structure and reorganize it according to their own design. How is that possible? Asked his assistant, her voice barely a whisper. It shouldn't be. They're violating fundamental laws of physics. Unless those laws aren't as fundamental as we believed. Torres pulled up classified files that detailed humanity's secret research. For decades, their scientists had theorized about forms of matter that existed in quantum superposition. The ancient artifacts had hinted at technologies that could manipulate reality at the subatomic level. Now those theories faced a terrible practical test. The Devourers, as intelligence agencies quickly labeled them, moved through space like a plague of living geometry. Their forms shifted constantly, configurations of matter that reformed themselves according to need. They consumed planets by surrounding them with swarms of smaller units, each one breaking down matter and rebuilding it as more DEVO. URERs. Captain David Park watched the tactical display as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Hegemony's Second Fleet had engaged the enemy at Kalar Station. Result: complete annihilation. The Collective's defense grid at Terminus had activated its ancient weapons. Result: temporary delay before consumption. The Republic's merchant Marine had attempted to evacuate civilians from the Outer Rim. Result: 47 ships converted into enemy resources. Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from Galactic Command. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the emergency session of the Galactic Council. Representatives from the three major powers sat around a circular table, their faces grim with the weight of unfolding catastrophe. Citizens of the galaxy, began Chancellor Vex of the Hegemony, his proud bearing diminished by recent losses. We face a threat unlike any in recorded history. These entities, these devourers, possess technology that surpasses our understanding. They have consumed 17 star systems in the past week. High Counselor Zara of the Collective leaned forward, her ancient eyes reflecting centuries of accumulated wisdom. Our projections indicate they will reach the core worlds within 60 days. All available resources must be mobilized for the defense of civilization. Trade Minister Cole of the Republic's voice carried the weight of economic collapse. The Outer Rim is in full evacuation. We're consolidating our forces at defensive positions, but our preliminary engagements suggest conventional tactics are ineffective. Chancellor Vex's image turned toward the camera, addressing the smaller species that lived under the protection of the major powers. By order of the Galactic Council, all member species will contribute to the war effort. This includes the Terran Federation, which will provide manufacturing facilities and raw materials for our fleets. Ambassador Lisa Chun received the transmission in her office on Terra Prime. The ultimatum was clear. Surrender human industrial capacity to the war effort or face economic sanctions that would cripple the Terran Federation. The major powers still viewed humanity as a resource to be managed rather than an ally to be consulted. Acknowledged, Chancellor, Chun replied through official channels. The Terran Federation stands ready to serve the galaxy in this dark hour. Her public response satisfied the Council's expectations. Her private actions told a different story. Within hours, coded messages traveled through quantum networks to military installations throughout human space. The Shadow Fleet began moving toward predetermined positions. Research facilities activated projects that had waited decades for implementation. Elite military units prepared for deployment. Using weapons that existed in theoretical models, the Devourer's second wave struck at the heart of collective space. Their swarm ships moved like a living storm, adapting to each defensive measure. With frightening intelligence, energy shields that had protected worlds for millennia crumbled under weapons that rewrote the fundamental forces holding them together. Dr. Emily Carter watched the battle from her laboratory, deep within Terra's crust. Her quantum analysis systems parsed the enemy's attack patterns, searching for weaknesses in their seemingly perfect adaptation. The Devourers learned from each encounter, modifying their approach to counter every defense they encountered. They're using some form of quantum consciousness, she reported to military command. Each unit shares information instantaneously across vast distances. They're not just adapting to our weapons. They're evolving. General Tom Wilson studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. How long before they reach human space? At current expansion rates, approximately 3 weeks. The outer defense perimeters are collapsing faster than predicted. Wilson nodded grimly. 3 weeks to prepare for an enemy that had destroyed the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. 3 weeks to implement contingency plans that had been developed over centuries. 3 weeks to reveal humanity's true capabilities to a galaxy that had dismissed them as irrelevant. The refugee crisis overwhelmed every inhabited system. Billions of beings fled the advancing Devourers, their ships clogging space lanes and overwhelming planetary resources. The major powers struggled to maintain order as their carefully structured society collapsed under the weight of unprecedented catastrophe. Many refugee fleets headed toward human space, seeing the Terran Federation's worlds as safe havens far from the front lines. They arrived to find human officials politely directing them to designated refugee camps, while human military forces prepared for something the aliens couldn't comprehend. Colonel Ana Rivera watched the latest intelligence briefings with her senior staff. The Devourers had consumed 43 star systems and showed no signs of slowing. Their adaptive capabilities made conventional warfare impossible. Every weapon the galaxy deployed against them became a lesson in how to counter that same weapon. They're not just consuming matter, she explained to her officers. They're consuming information. Every defense we deploy teaches them how to defeat similar defenses. Traditional military doctrine is not just ineffective against them. It's counterproductive. What about our quantum weapons? Asked her aide. Theoretical. Until now. We're about to find out if decades of research can stand against an enemy that treats physics as a suggestion rather than a law. The galaxy's last hope seemed to rest with the Collective's ancient guardians, automated defense systems that had protected the core worlds since before recorded history. These massive constructs emerged from their hidden bases, their weapons. Powered by technologies that predated current civilization, the battle was brief and decisive. The Devourers studied the Guardians' attacks for exactly 17 minutes before developing countermeasures. The ancient weapons that had maintained galactic peace for millennia became scrap metal, drifting through space. As the third wave of Devourers approached human space, the galaxy's surviving leaders sent one final transmission to the Terran Federation. The message was different from their previous ultimatums. This time, they weren't demanding tribute or resources. They were begging for sanctuary. Ambassador Chun listened to their desperate pleas with carefully hidden satisfaction. The species that had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers were now seeking shelter in human space. The powers that had treated Earth as a useful but unremarkable backwater were now hoping that humanity might somehow save them from extinction. Of course, Chun replied with perfect diplomatic courtesy. The Terran Federation welcomes all refugees seeking shelter from this terrible threat. We will do everything in our power to protect those who cannot protect themselves. She closed the channel and activated her secure communication system. 3 simple words traveled through quantum networks to every human military installation. In the galaxy, execute Order 1. The message reached Admiral Stone aboard her flagship, hidden in the darkness between stars. Around her, the Shadow Fleet powered up weapons that drew energy from dimensions the galaxy had never imagined. Hundreds of ships that had remained invisible for decades began their final approach to humanity's moment of truth. The galaxy was about to discover what humans had built in the shadows. And the Devourers were about to learn why humanity had earned the right to survive among the stars. The Devourer swarm emerged from hyperspace at the edge of human territory like a plague of living metal. Their forms shifted and writhed, configurations of matter that defied conventional understanding. Millions of units spread across the system, each one scanning for resources to consume and convert. They found what appeared to be a small patrol fleet. 6 human vessels maintained standard formation near the outer planets, their energy signatures indicating obsolete weapons and aging. Hull plating. The Devourers had encountered similar forces throughout the galaxy. Such minor threats required minimal attention. The first swarm wave approached the human ships with practiced efficiency. Their scanning systems analyzed the vessel's defensive capabilities, cataloging weapons and shield frequencies for rapid neutralization. The process had become routine after consuming dozens of similar fleets. Space rippled. The distortion began as a subtle warping of light, barely visible against the starfield. Then reality seemed to fold in on itself as hundreds of ships materialized from empty space. The Shadow Fleet dropped their quantum camouflage simultaneously, their hulls reflecting starlight for the first time in decades. Admiral Rebecca Stone watched the tactical display from her command center deep within the flagship Prometheus. The Devourers had frozen in apparent confusion, their adaptive systems struggling to process the sudden appearance of a massive fleet where sensors had detected nothing. All units, this is command, weapons free. Execute Pattern 7. The human fleet moved with coordination that seemed impossible for vessels of their size. Each ship occupied a precise position in a three-dimensional formation that maximized their firing solutions while minimizing exposure to enemy weapons. They had practiced this maneuver for 30 years, waiting for the moment when humanity would need to reveal its true capabilities. The quantum disruptors fired first. Beams of coherent energy struck the Devourer formations, and something unprecedented happened. Instead of adapting to the attack, the enemy units simply ceased to exist. The weapons didn't destroy them in any conventional sense. They rewrote the quantum signatures that held the Devourer's matter together, reducing them to component atoms that scattered harmlessly through space. Dr. Michael Torres monitored the battle from his laboratory, his instruments tracking the performance of weapons that had existed only in theory until this moment. The quantum cascade is working better than projected. Their adaptive systems can't compensate for attacks that operate at the subatomic level. How many units neutralized? Asked his assistant. Approximately 12,000 in the first salvo. The remaining forces are attempting to retreat, but their quantum signatures are already destabilizing from proximity exposure. The Devourers tried to adapt, their forms shifting as they attempted to develop defenses against the human weapons. But the disruptors attacked the fundamental forces that held matter together. There was no defense against weapons that convinced atoms they didn't want to remain bonded to each other. Captain Maria Santos led her boarding teams through the hull of a damaged Devourer vessel. Her soldiers moved through corridors that reformed themselves as they watched the ship's structure trying to adapt to their presence. But the neural interface systems they carried had been designed specifically for this moment. Neural link established, reported her technical specialist. We're interfacing with their quantum consciousness network. The Devourer ship shuddered as its control systems received instructions from alien minds. The vessel's adaptive mechanisms turned inward, converting the ship's own hull into raw materials for constructing human equipment. Within minutes, the enemy ship had become a forward base for human forces. Target the command nodes, Santos ordered. If we can subvert their coordination systems, their entire formation will collapse. The battle spread across multiple star systems as more Devourer forces arrived to investigate the destruction of their advance units. Each wave brought larger numbers and more sophisticated adaptive systems. Each wave encountered human forces that had prepared for exactly this contingency. General Tom Wilson coordinated the defense from Terra Prime, his command center receiving real-time updates from battlefields across human space. The holographic displays showed engagement patterns that no military academy had ever taught. Three-dimensional chess matches fought with weapons that redefined the meaning of warfare. Status report from the beta sector? He asked his aide. Colonel, Rivera's forces have secured the Devourer command ship. They're using captured systems to broadcast false coordination signals to remaining enemy units. Gamma sector? Dr. Carter's AI systems have successfully predicted enemy adaptation patterns. Our forces are deploying countermeasures before the Devourers can implement their defensive modifications. Wilson nodded with satisfaction. Humanity had spent centuries studying galactic warfare, analyzing every conflict and cataloging every tactical approach. The major powers had dismissed human military observers as harmless students learning from their betters. They had never suspected that those observers were gathering intelligence for the day when humanity would need to fight alone. The tide of battle turned when Dr. Emily Carter activated the Prometheus Array. The network of artificial intelligence systems had been built over decades, each node hidden within seemingly innocent research facilities. When linked together, they formed a computational matrix that could analyze enemy behavior patterns and predict their responses with frightening accuracy. Array activation successful, Carter reported. We're tracking approximately 40 million individual Devourer units across 17 star systems. Predictive algorithms are generating tactical solutions for each engagement. The AI systems began feeding information to human commanders, providing real-time analysis of enemy movements and recommended countermeasures. The Devourer's greatest strength, their ability to adapt and learn, became a weakness when faced with systems that could predict their adaptations before they occurred, but the victory came at a cost. The galaxy's surviving powers had been watching the battle, their long-range sensors recording every detail of humanity's military capabilities. The species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers was demonstrating technology that surpassed their most advanced systems. Chancellor Vex of the hegemony stared at the tactical displays with growing horror. Not horror at the Devourer's defeat, but horror at the implications of humanity's victory. How long have they possessed these capabilities? Analysis suggests decades, possibly centuries, replied his intelligence chief. The quantum manipulation technology appears to be derived from principles we've never encountered. Their military doctrine incorporates tactical concepts that no known species has developed. High Counselor Zara of the Collective reviewed the sensor data with ancient eyes that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. They've been preparing for this. Every interaction with our species, every trade agreement, every diplomatic contact has been part of a larger strategy. Preparing for what? Asked Trade Minister Cole of the Republic. For us, Zara replied quietly. They've been preparing for the day when they might need to stand against the galaxy itself. The final phase of the battle began when the Devourers deployed their ultimate weapon. A construct the size of a small moon materialized at the edge of human space, its surface covered with devices that bent space and time around themselves. The weapon began charging, drawing energy from the quantum foam that underlay reality itself. Admiral Stone watched the readings with calm professional interest. Time to target? Approximately 4 hours until it reaches full charge. At that point, it will have enough energy to sterilize every planet in the system. Understood. Initiate final protocol. The human fleet reformed into a configuration that no tactical manual had ever described. Each ship took position at specific coordinates that formed a three-dimensional geometric pattern spanning millions of kilometers. When the pattern was complete, every vessel activated their quantum drives simultaneously. Space folded. The human fleet vanished from normal space-time, existing briefly in dimensions that conventional physics claimed were impossible. When they returned to normal space, they had bypassed every defense the Devourer weapon possessed. The assault was over in seconds. Human ships materialized inside the weapon's defensive perimeter, their quantum disruptors firing at point-blank range. The moon-sized construct dissolved into its component atoms, its threat neutralized before it could complete its charging cycle. The surviving Devourers fled into hyperspace, their quantum consciousness network carrying warnings about the species that had defeated them, but the warnings would find no listeners. The human victory had been total, their weapons ensuring that no Devourer unit would survive to threaten another world. As the last enemy signatures faded from the sensors, humanity faced a new challenge. The galaxy's major powers demanded explanations for what they had witnessed. How had humanity developed such advanced technology? How long had they been preparing for this war? And most importantly, what other capabilities were they hiding? The answers would reshape galactic civilization. The species that had been dismissed as minor players were about to become the most important force in known space. And the powers that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were about to discover that the balance of power had shifted forever. The Great Assembly Hall on Neutral Station Concordia had never hosted a session quite like this one. Representatives from every surviving civilization gathered under the vast dome, their voices creating a chorus of accusation and demand that echoed through the chamber. At the center of it all sat Ambassador Lisa Chun, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the fury surrounding her. Chancellor Vex of the hegemony stood at the prosecution podium, his words carrying the weight of a civilization that had lost 17 core worlds to the Devourers. The Terran Federation has deceived this body for centuries. They have hidden military capabilities that surpass our combined forces. They have violated every treaty regarding technological development and military expansion. We saved your species, Chun replied quietly, her voice carrying easily through the acoustic design of the chamber. The Devourers would have consumed every world in the galaxy if we had not intervened. That is precisely the point, interjected High Counselor Zara of the Collective. Your capabilities were sufficient to defeat an enemy that destroyed our most advanced defenses. This suggests a level of technological development that should have been impossible for a species of your apparent age and resources. Trade Minister Cole of the Republic leaned forward, his economic mind focusing on practical concerns. The implications for galactic trade are staggering. Every commercial agreement, every resource allocation, every economic projection has been based on false assumptions about human capabilities. Chen maintained her diplomatic composure, though she could feel the weight of centuries of careful deception pressing down on her. The Terran Federation has always operated within the bounds of galactic law. We have fulfilled every treaty obligation and honored every trade agreement. By concealing your true nature, Vex shot back, you have presented yourselves as a minor species while secretly developing weapons that could threaten every established power in the galaxy. The accusations continued for hours, each representative demanding explanations for humanity's hidden capabilities. How had they developed quantum manipulation technology? Where had they acquired the resources to build their secret fleet? Who had taught them military tactics that surpassed anything in the galactic databases? Behind Chin's diplomatic facade, secure communication systems carried emergency messages to human installations throughout the galaxy. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities had triggered contingency plans that had been decades in the making. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood before a holographic display showing the positions of every major military force in the galaxy. The hegemony's surviving fleets were moving toward human space, their formation patterns suggesting preparation for siege operations. The Collective's ancient guardians were powering up for the first time in millennia. The Republic's merchant Marine was being militarized with weapons that violated their own commercial regulations. They're not just demanding explanations, Stone observed to her senior staff. They're positioning for military action. Estimated threat level? Asked her intelligence chief. Moderate to severe. They lacked the coordination for a unified assault. But individual actions by any major power could escalate into full-scale conflict. Stone activated her command authority, sending coded instructions to sleeper assets throughout the galaxy. The revelation of the Shadow Fleet had been only the beginning. Humanity's true preparations went far deeper than anyone suspected. Dr. Michael Torres received the activation codes in his laboratory, his hands trembling slightly as he input the sequences that would reveal humanity's deepest secrets. The quantum research facility beneath Luna's surface had been the visible portion of a project that spanned dozens of star systems. Initiate deep protocol, he instructed his AI systems, across human space, installations that had masqueraded as mining facilities or research stations began revealing their true purpose. Weapon platforms that could strike anywhere in the galaxy within hours. Manufacturing centers that could produce fleets of ships using automated systems. Communication networks that operated through dimensions the galaxy had never imagined. The scope of humanity's preparations became clear as each system came online. They had not simply built a secret fleet. They had constructed an entire shadow civilization designed to function independently of galactic infrastructure. Colonel Ana Rivera watched her troops deploy from hidden bases throughout the galaxy. Elite units that had trained for decades in facilities that officially didn't exist. Soldiers equipped with weapons that could phase between dimensions. Strike teams that could infiltrate any installation using technology that made them effectively invisible. All units report ready status, she informed command. We have assets in position near every major population center and military installation in the galaxy. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not simply prepared to defend themselves. They had prepared to project power across the entire galaxy if necessary. Every major civilization suddenly faced the possibility that human forces could appear anywhere. Without warning, but the galaxy's leaders were not content with defensive positioning. As the session at Concordia continued, their demands grew more aggressive. They wanted access to human technology. They wanted oversight of human military capabilities. They wanted assurance that humanity would never use their secret weapons against the established powers. The Terran Federation will submit to technological inspection, declared Chancellor Vex. All military installations will be open to galactic oversight. All classified research will be shared with the appropriate authorities. And if we refuse, Tron asked, then you will face the consequences of your deception. The galaxy will not tolerate a rogue power that threatens the stability of civilized space. The threat was clear. Submit to subjugation or face the combined might of the galaxy's surviving powers. The irony was not lost on Chun that the same species demanding submission had recently been begging for humanity's protection. As the accusations continued, long-range sensors detected a new threat approaching from beyond the galactic rim. The readings were similar to the Devourers but different in crucial ways. Where the Devourers had been chaotic and adaptive, this new presence showed signs of deliberate intelligence and strategic planning. Dr. Emily Carter analyzed the sensor data with growing alarm. The energy signatures are consistent with the technology that created the Devourers. But these readings suggest something far more sophisticated. A parent species? Asked her assistant. Possibly, or something that views the Devourers as failed experiments. Either way, they're heading directly toward the galactic core. The news reached the Assembly just as the formal charges against humanity were being read. The galaxy's leaders found themselves facing a terrible choice: continue their accusations against the species that had saved them, or unite against a threat that might be worse than the Devourers. Ambassador Rodriguez, Chun's deputy, stood to address the Assembly. Honored delegates, I understand your concerns about humanity's capabilities. But we must consider the timing of these revelations. We did not reveal our true nature for conquest or domination. We revealed it because the galaxy faced extinction. Pretty words, replied Vex. But they do not address the fundamental question of trust. How can we coexist with a species that has deceived us for centuries? The same way we coexisted before, Rodriguez answered. By recognizing that our survival depends on cooperation rather than conquest. The debate might have continued indefinitely, but the approaching threat forced a decision. The new enemy would reach the outer rim within weeks, and the galaxy's defenses had been shattered by the Devourer invasion. Only humanity possessed the weapons and tactics needed to mount an effective defense. High Counselor Zara spoke for the collective, her ancient voice carrying the weight of millennia. The immediate threat takes precedence over our concerns about deception. We propose a temporary alliance for the duration of this crisis. Temporary? Chun asked. Until we can determine the true nature of humanity's intentions. Your species has demonstrated the capability to dominate the galaxy. We must know whether you intend to use that capability. The vote was close, but pragmatism won over pride. The galaxy's surviving powers agreed to a limited alliance with humanity, pooling their resources to face the approaching threat. But the agreement came with conditions that would test the relationship between species that had never been equals. As the session concluded, Chun activated her personal communication system and sent a message to Terra Prime, 3 words that would determine humanity's future: relationship with the galaxy, reveal. Everything now. The response came immediately, confirmed. A full disclosure authorized. Across human space, the final layer of secrecy fell away. The galaxy was about to discover that the Shadow Fleet and quantum weapons were only the beginning of humanity's preparations. The species that had hidden in the shadows for centuries was ready to step into the light. But the price of that revelation would be the end of the galaxy as everyone had known it. The old order was about to give way to something entirely new, and humanity would bear the responsibility for whatever came next. The architects came like gods returning to reclaim their domain. Their vessels were not ships in any conventional sense, but rather extensions of their will made manifest in three-dimensional space. Each construct spanned thousands of kilometers, their surfaces flowing like liquid metal as they reshaped themselves according to need. General Tom Wilson studied the tactical displays from his command center beneath Terra Prime, watching as the enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace at the galaxy's edge. The readings defied everything humanity had learned about physics, showing energy signatures that existed in dimensions their instruments could barely detect. "Analysis complete," reported Dr. Emily Carter through the communication link. "They're not using technology in any sense we understand. They appear to be beings of pure energy inhabiting constructs of organized matter." "Capabilities?" Wilson asked. "Unknown. Our sensors can't penetrate their energy fields. But if they created the Devourers as terraforming tools, their power levels must be beyond anything we've encountered." The first engagement came at the Rim. Worlds where the Collective's ancient guardians made their stand. The massive constructs that had protected galactic civilization for millennia activated weapons that drew power from stellar cores. Energy beams that could vaporize planets struck the Architect vessels with the force of compressed suns. The attack had no visible effect. The Architect ships absorbed the energy and converted it into more of themselves, growing larger and more complex with each assault. Within hours, the Guardians that had stood for eons were reduced to component atoms, their ancient wisdom consumed by entities that viewed matter as merely another form of energy to be manipulated. High Counselor Zara watched the destruction from her command ship, her ancient eyes reflecting the death of everything she had spent lifetimes protecting. "They're not conquering us, they're recycling us." The Architect's advance continued with terrifying efficiency. They didn't destroy worlds so much as reshape them according to their own design. Planets became geometric patterns of organized matter. Their surfaces transformed into structures that served purposes beyond organic comprehension. Captain Alex Turner led the combined fleet that humanity had assembled for the galaxy's final defense. Ships from every surviving civilization flew in formation with human vessels, their crews working together for the first time in galactic history. The irony was not lost on anyone that it had taken the threat of extinction to achieve the cooperation that diplomacy had failed to create. "All units, this is Turner. Remember, we're not fighting ships or weapons. We're fighting forces that view reality as something to be rewritten according to their preferences." The combined fleet numbered in the thousands, representing the last military strength of a dozen civilizations. But as they approached the Architect forces, the true scope of the enemy became clear. The beings they faced had been manipulating matter and energy since before any current species had evolved consciousness. Dr. Michael Torres coordinated the attack from his quantum laboratory, his systems linked to every weapon in the combined fleet. "Quantum disruptors are having minimal effect. They're compensating for our attacks by existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously." "What about the neural interface systems?" asked Admiral Stone. "No viable targets. They don't appear to have discrete consciousness units that we can subvert. They're more like a single distributed intelligence inhabiting multiple physical manifestations." The first assault wave achieved nothing except to reveal the futility of conventional tactics. The Architects studied each attack with the patience of entities that measured time in geological epoch. Their response came in the form of energy fields that simply erased attacking ships from existence, not destroying them, but rather convincing reality that they had never been. Colonel Ana Rivera led her troops in a desperate boarding action against one of the smaller Architect constructs. Her soldiers phased through the entity's hull using dimensional shift technology, finding themselves inside a space that defied geometric logic. Corridors folded back on themselves, gravity existed in multiple directions simultaneously, and the walls themselves seemed aware of their presence. "This isn't a ship," she reported to command. "It's more like being inside a living thought." The boarding action failed when the construct simply expelled the human forces by changing its internal physics. Rivera's troops found themselves floating in space, their equipment functioning normally but their target having become temporarily intangible. As the battle continued, it became clear that humanity's technological advantages were meaningless against enemies that existed beyond the constraints of physical law. The quantum weapons that had defeated the Devourers were toys compared to the power the architects wielded. But humanity had not survived by relying solely on superior technology. Their greatest strength had always been their ability to inspire others to fight for something greater than themselves. The turning point came when Captain Turner broadcast a message to every ship in the combined fleet. His words carried across dozens of different communication systems, reaching crews from species that had barely known of each other's existence weeks before. To all ships, all crews, all beings who call this galaxy home, we face an enemy that views us as imperfect matter to be recycled into something more suitable to their design. They have power beyond our understanding and technology that makes our greatest achievements seem primitive. Turner paused, looking out at the tactical display where architect forces continued their inexorable advance. But they lack something that every being in this fleet possesses. They lack the will to fight for something beyond themselves. They lack the courage to stand against impossible odds for the sake of others. They lack the understanding that strength comes not from power, but from the choice to use that power in defense of those who cannot defend themselves. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Ships that had been falling back reformed their battle lines. Crews that had been preparing for evacuation returned to their weapons. The combined fleet, representing dozens of species and hundreds of different military traditions, found common cause in the face of extinction. The architects, for all their power, had not anticipated this development. Their analysis of galactic civilization had focused on technological capabilities and resource distribution. They had not calculated the variable of sentient beings choosing to sacrifice themselves for others. Dr. Emily Carter made the breakthrough that changed everything. Working with captured Devourer technology and ancient artifacts that predated known civilization, she discovered the fundamental weakness in the architect's approach to reality manipulation. "They're not gods," she announced to the command staff. "They're extremely advanced beings who learn to manipulate the quantum substrate of reality. But their power depends on their ability to impose their will on the universe around them." "Meaning?" asked General Wilson. "Meaning they can be resisted by a sufficiently strong collective will. Every being that refuses to accept their version of reality weakens their ability to impose that reality." The final battle began when humanity revealed their ultimate secret. The Sol system itself had been converted into a weapon over the course of centuries. Terra's surface concealed quantum generators that could project defensive fields across light years of space. Luna housed AI systems that could coordinate the thoughts and actions of billions of beings. The asteroid belt contained weapons platforms that drew power from the sun itself. But the true weapon was not technological. As the architect forces approached humanity's home system, every human being, every refugee sheltered in human space, and every crew member of the combined fleet focused their will on a single concept: the absolute refusal to be erased from existence. The effect was unprecedented. The architects' reality manipulation fields encountered resistance they had never experienced. Matter that should have been malleable became rigid. Energy that should have followed their commands became chaotic. The universe itself seemed to rebel against their attempts to reshape it. The battle was won not through superior firepower, but through the determination of countless beings who chose to believe in their own right to exist. The architects, faced with a form of resistance they could not understand or counter, withdrew to whatever realm had spawned them. In the aftermath, the galaxy faced the challenge of rebuilding. The old hierarchies had been shattered by the successive crises, and the balance of power had shifted permanently. The hegemony's military might had proven insufficient. The collective's ancient wisdom had failed to provide solutions. The Republic's economic power had been rendered meaningless. Only humanity had possessed both the technology and the will necessary to protect galactic civilization. The species that had hidden in the shadows for centuries emerged as the reluctant leaders of a new order. Ambassador Lisa Chun stood before the reformed Galactic Council, her words carrying the weight of a species that had earned the right to speak as equals. The Terran Federation proposes a new framework for galactic governance. One based not on military dominance or economic advantage, but on the principle that all sentient beings have the right to determine their own destiny. The proposal was revolutionary. Instead of the old system where major powers ruled over lesser species, the new order would be built on cooperation between equals. Decisions would be made through consensus rather than force. Resources would be shared based on need rather than power. Not everyone agreed. Some representatives from the surviving major powers argued for a return to the traditional hierarchy. They claimed that humanity's victory had been due to luck rather than wisdom, and that the old system had maintained galactic peace for millennia. But the majority of species recognized that the old order had failed when tested. The hegemony's fleets had been useless against the devourers. The collective's knowledge had provided no solutions to the architect threat. Only humanity's combination of technological innovation and moral courage had saved galactic civilization. The vote to adopt the new framework was overwhelming. Representatives from hundreds of species agreed to join a federation based on mutual respect and shared responsibility. The age of imperial dominance was ending, replaced by an era of cooperative exploration and development. Admiral Rebecca Stone, now elderly but still sharp, watched the new ships launch from Earth's orbital shipyards. The vessels carried mixed crews from dozens of species. Their mission to explore regions of space that had been too dangerous for individual civilizations to investigate alone. "Any regrets?" asked her aide, a young officer who had been born after the Architect War. Stone considered the question carefully. "We spent centuries preparing for war. Now we have the chance to prepare for peace. I think that's a better use of our capabilities." The galaxy had been saved, but the universe remained vast and full of mysteries. New threats would emerge and new challenges would test the resolve of the species that had chosen to stand together. But for the first time in galactic history, those challenges would be met by beings who understood that strength came not from domination, but from the courage to protect those who could not protect themselves. Humanity had stepped out of the shadows at last. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy that the greatest power was not the ability to destroy, but the willingness to sacrifice for others. The age of empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun.